Funny that it's Essendon player testing positive or something, isn't it?
Pull your finger out of your ass.
Jeez.
This is my first ever football jumper. My three votes for Charlie. Oh, top of the world, mate.
What a time to be alive.
I look a bit like Nickel Bellic from GTA 4, I feel, with this.
That could get dangerous.
Prelim final weekend, done and dusted. What an absolute anticlimax, I think, is probably the best way to sum up the prelims over the weekend. Although if you're a Melbourne and Bulldogs supporter, you probably wouldn't be saying that. But, geez, they were probably two of the most one-sided prelims you'll ever see. And I don't know how else to describe it, though. But the performances of those two teams were quite incredible as well.
I think to say that they were incredible was almost an understatement. They were that good. It was something we haven't quite seen before. And I said last week a couple of times how the prelim final weekend is the purest weekend of football you see, and it just didn't really live up to that at all, did it? It was such a one-sided affair for both games. But like you said, if you're a Melbourne or Bulldogs fan, you'll be over the moon at the moment and really looking forward to what is shaping up to be one of the better grand finals we've had in a few years.
Absolutely. I think it's the grand final we all kind of wanted anyway. I think Melbourne and Bulldogs. It would have been nice to have it at the MCG in front of a packed stadium, but I'm sure they'll do a great job in Perth. But yeah, geez, Melbourne, especially on Friday night for mine, were unbelievable. I think that's probably the best performance I've seen a team do ever, to be honest. It was that good. I was in complete awe and shock with what they produced. And then the Bulldogs said, hold my beer. They pretty much matched them the 24 hours later.
That is a huge call to say that that's best performance you've seen ever, because there's been some absolute rippers, as we all know.
It was just the way they just completely dominated, and Geelong were powerless. And they absolutely tore into shreds.
They couldn't do anything, and whether that's because they didn't change anything in the coach's box, I didn't see any game plan try to change to limit Melbourne's influence, or whether that was because they had six players that came out as being a little bit sick, a bit under the weather a couple of days before, and then they tried to claim it wasn't an excuse. Well, why say it? But I don't know. I don't know what it was, but yeah, both sides they looked so hungry, and they sat 1 and 2 in the ladder most of the year anyway. So it was almost the expected grand final. But like you said, I do agree. I think we all or for all mutual fans anyway, I think this is the grand final we all wanted to see.
Yeah, I think the positive to come out of both games being absolute thumpings is it's going to create a massive grand final, and I think it's going to be very tight. I can't see the grand final being a whitewash like the prelims were. So I think as dominant as Melbourne were and as dominant as the Bulldogs were, it's going to combine to create one great game come grand final day in 2 weeks, which is a bit different. But yeah, that was unbelievable. Top two sides for most of the year as well, Melbourne and the Dogs. And they played in some great games. The two games that they played in during the season as well were highly anticipated, and they went one each as well during the year. So it's set up for a great grand final.
There's really nothing tearing them apart. I mean, after the Melbourne game, like you said, you look at the games and you go, I don't think it matters who wins. No one's knocking Melbourne off. But then to see Bulldogs go over to Adelaide and beat Port by 70 odd points.
It's crazy.
You just don't see it.
Ridiculous.
And on the other side of that, Port Adelaide have got some questions. That's 2 home prelims in a row now that they've lost.
Gone back to those old choker days from the early 2000s.
Yeah, exactly. So something's got to be looked at there, I think, because home prelims are hard to earn. So all credit to them for getting there. But then to lose 2 in a row is for me, it's a serious problem.
Definitely, absolutely, and just the manner in what they could be forgiven for last year's loss. They lost, to Richmond, the great Richmond team over the last few years, and then this year, absolutely thumped by the Bulldogs, who have been on the road for the last month, travelling here and there. They didn't even get a captain's run the day before the game. To lose like that was very concerning. They're the sort of performances that can ruin a club, in the short term as well, and really ruin some careers.
Absolutely. It can be very damaging. And I mean, you talked about the Richmond game. The difference with that one, I think, was it came down to a kick. It was only 6 points between the two teams. And controversially, there was a free kick given to Kane Lambert that, saw us hit the front in that game. So, it could have really gone either way. But this one here was so one-sided. And you think they would have been a little bit hungrier than that, especially after what happened last year and so narrowly missing out in the grand final. And this was really their big chance. And yeah, to go down by 70 odd points was disappointing is probably an understatement. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, where to here now from Port? Like, I don't even know what I just said. I completely butchered that. Where to here for Port?
I think Port is still going to give it a crack next year. I don't think this is the end for them. I still think like they've got a couple of older players, but a lot of their list is still relatively young as well if you look at some of their guns. So I think they'll be all right. I don't know if this is the end. Maybe
They're pretty young.
They're pretty young. Look, they might not make a prelim next year. Who knows? But I think they'll still be all right, and they'll come back pretty strong next year, I'd say.
And Ken Hinkley's safe after the weekend?
I mean,
it's a tough one. I think he will be.
It's tough to get rid of a coach that's made 2 prelims in a row. I mean, you're so close. I mean, the margin wasn't close, but the fact that you're in a prelim, you're so close to the big dance. I don't know. It'd be very stiff, I think, for them to get rid of him.
Next year's going to be massive for him.
If they don't.
It's almost premiership or bust next year for Port. To be honest, for Ken Hinkley anyway, he's been there 8-9 years now.
He's been there for a while. What do you think? If they make the grand final but lose, he'd be safe.
Yeah, I mean, it probably depends on how they go in it, doesn't it?
Yeah, if it's a close game.
Yeah, but I think it's huge. Like they've got him there. You know, they've had multiple opportunities to make a grand final and win a premiership, and they just haven't. They haven't gotten past that prelim stage. So
and they've got the names.
They've got the names. They've got some real young superstars as well. So this was a great opportunity for them. I don't think they could have gotten a better opportunity than what they had on the weekend.
No, that's it. And I think we'll cover their draft picks, or not draft picks, the trades that they made in the offseason have been big all year in terms of Alir and Fantasia. And both of those boys I thought were fairly quiet on the weekend.
Yeah,
and
Bulldogs
that's
did
credit
well to stop Alir.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's credit, I think, to the Bulldogs and Josh Shackey in particular that really shut down Alir and limited his influence. And then Fantasia just couldn't get a sniff up forward. And that's the same for Robbie Gray, Connor Rosie up there as well. Charlie Dixon didn't have a lot of it. None of them did really. So it's just credit to the Bulldogs just for keeping these big names so quiet. I think Ollie Wines is probably the only one that really impressed me from Port Adelaide.
He's been good all season, no matter what.
And Travis Boak, I should say. But you expect that from those two.
Yeah.
You don't expect anything less. They're champions of the game. So
yeah, for sure. All right, let's talk about a couple of individuals, probably the 2 most dominant performances over the weekend, and they were Max Gorn on Friday night and Bayley Smith on Saturday night. These 2 players have had an unbelievable final series already. They both had fantastic seasons. Max Gorn in particular, he's an All-Australian ruckman and the captain, and he's the captain of the Ds, and he could be holding that Premiership Cup aloft in a couple of weeks' time, and he'll go down as a Melbourne legend and the king of that club if he can bring home a premiership. And the way he played on the weekend was the best individual game you'll see from a ruckman ever, I think. That was incredible.
Seeing one better than that.
And one of the best individual prelim games you'll ever see as well.
And I think regardless of premiership or not, in 2 weeks' time, he goes down is equally as regarded, or if not even more highly regarded than Jim Steins in terms of ruckman at Melbourne. And that's a massive call because we all know what Jim Steins was for Melbourne and the game of AFL. So that is huge. But you're right, he put on an absolute clinic in that prelim. And I mean, my best mate Mason Cox tweeted, welcome to prelim folklore. But I mean, I'm not just saying this because I'm a salty Mason Cox hater, but I think Gorn trumps Cox's performance by a long shot. And I spoke to you before recording. It's more because of how dynamic it was. It wasn't Mason Cox was dominant out of the goal square, took big marks, went back, kicked him. But Gorn was dominant all over the ground and kicked 5. So I think his performance trumped it for sure.
He was doing things you shouldn't be doing.
Not at that height.
No.
Not at that height. If you saw someone like Petrarca or Clayton Oliver do it, you'd say, okay, that's reasonable. But not for someone Max Gorn's size. And I'd say ability, but I mean, you just expect great things from him now, don't we?
Yeah, I couldn't believe what I was watching. To be honest, it was crazy. And the goals he was kicking, that snap around the corner from 45, and then the big bomb from 55 on the run, and then taking it out of the ruck contest and snapping it around the body. That's not what Dusty does, isn't it? And that's what Dusty was doing last final series and the final series before that. So it's crazy to see a big ruckman do it. And as I said before, if he can lead Melbourne to their first premiership in 57 years, he'll be up there with the greats of that club. And if he isn't already, he'll be regarded as one of the best to ever play for him. And that's huge for a club the oldest club in the AFL as well.
Oh, 100%. And they've been so starved for success. And the Gorn was there in some of the trying times, for sure. So, yeah, I mean, these individual performances in finals, like, you mentioned Dusty, but when you see these players have these performances in finals, it really is special, and it's something not to take for granted, I think. And that one, like you said, Gorn snapped from 45 out. I mean, he took the mark and we all saw him play on. I think everyone was thinking, what are you doing? Don't. And then he just snapped it from 45, went through and I mean, look, I didn't predict that he'd have the rest of the game that he did, but I think on then I'm like, he's on tonight. He's going to have a good night regardless of what happens. And then to see him do what he did was really special.
4 in the third quarter. It's just ridiculous what he was doing. So it was great to watch. I think probably up there with on par or maybe slightly better than Cooter's performance against the Bombers in 99 in that prelim.
Well, all I've heard is what you told me, so I can't actually say from first-hand experience, but I've heard some incredible things.
Go back, watch the game. He was incredible, Cooter, that day. He tore Essendon's heart out.
I heard he had about 200 fantasy points in one quarter.
Yeah, in the last quarter. Yeah. It was crazy. Anyway, so I think, Max is right up there with that sort of performance, and that is huge. So, if he can lift that cup up next week with Simon Goodwin, they'll go down in folklore. So, but the other great individual performance from the weekend as well was Bayley Smith. He backed up his great game against the Lions the week before and 4 goals and what do you have, 30-odd possessions again? Like he's a freak as well. People are calling him the next face of the AFL, the next Dusty, isn't he?
Well, that's it. I mean, he's 20. He's doing it younger than what Dusty was. I mean, Dusty was good, I'm not lying, but he didn't play finals as well, Dustin Martin, to be fair to him. But Baslenka or Bayley Smith, whatever you want to call him, is coming to this side and he's just lifted for the big occasions. Kicked 3 last week, had about 25 odd touches. Like you said, kicked 4 this week again. So he's been consistent. He's done it, 2 weeks in a row now. And he's one of my favourites of the Norm Smith heading into the grand final. And I just think he's got that much confidence behind him in his own ability. And then I think the fact that, he's a bit of a cult figure from just the AFL in general, not just even Bulldog supporters, probably gives him a bit more of a lift as well. Yeah,
he's incredible athlete as well. One of the more professional players in the competition. He's just great to watch. He's just hard at it. He's a hard runner, and obviously he looks pretty good as well, which I'm sure the ladies agree with. And
some of the boys out there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I love him. If I swung that way, I'd absolutely have a crack, I reckon. So
well, I'm tempted to now, and I don't. But let me tell you, for someone that's quite follically challenged like me, that hair that he's got does things to me as well. So
it's a serious mane. Isn't it?
Mate, he's unbelievable all around. I think Bayley Smith, and even we don't talk about this much on the podcast, but players' personalities, I think, is something that people take for granted as well. I mean, you get some blokes that aren't, they're a bit camera shy and this and that, but Bayley Smith isn't afraid to be himself. And I think that shows in the way he plays footy as well, whether it's his celebrations. He did another NBA one on the weekend. I don't know if you saw that, the Carmelo Anthony.
I did see that, yeah.
So he did another one on the weekend. So he's not afraid to be himself and, show the things that he enjoys. And it shows in his footy. It reflects.
Yeah, got a lot of confidence, which I think can be mistaken for arrogance. But I think from the interviews he does, he's definitely more of a confidence person than arrogance, I think.
Oh, absolutely. He sounds humble when he speaks. He just sounds really grateful for things.
Yeah.
Which I think is the way that football is going to turn, because a lot of the mindfulness training that all the players are getting these days, I think they're starting to see football as an opportunity and something to be grateful for rather than something that they expect, if that makes sense. So you're going to start seeing that a lot more from these younger guys, but Bayley Smith just exemplifies that.
Yeah, for sure. What about Geelong? I mean, we spoke about Port Adelaide before. They were just as bad, if not worse.
They were doo-doo. They were, for lack of a better term, they were shocking. And I mean, you asked me before where to from Port. I'm going to ask you the same question, but where to for Geelong? Their list, as we know, they have about 11 players or so that are over 30, or I think that's the number. Where to from here for Geelong?
Well, over the weekend, there was a lot of talk about them having to start again. A lot of these old players, obviously towards the end, and then they've got a lot of young players that just aren't getting a crack, and they're going to want opportunities elsewhere. So if they don't win a flag with the list that they've got now, it's a failure, and they're going to have some serious list management issues if a lot of these young players leave or don't develop because they just haven't had any opportunities. So they're at a really interesting point. I think they'll probably have one more crack at it, which they should, because they've got such high-end talent and that experience there. But yeah, I think if they don't get close next year, then that's it. Then I think the rebuild for Geelong, I think regardless, even if they do win a premiership, regardless, their rebuild is going to be tough and long, because they just have not many young players in their team coming through.
we've talked about how good they've been at keeping their list rejuvenated over the last 10, 15 years, whatever it's been now. But I think, like you said, it's going to be a real hard one, this one, because they haven't made that effort to bring these young guys in. There's so many of them that aren't getting consistent games that would at other clubs, and they're going to explore those options, like you said. They're not going to hang around, and then I don't even know if they'll give it a good shake next year. And the only reason I say that is because I saw games this year where they did look a bit tired. They looked a little bit slow. I think they've still got the talent for sure, but these older bodies have gone deep into September again this year. Are they going to be able to hold up on a slightly shortened preseason from other clubs? And then, you head straight back into another big season of football. I don't know if their bodies are going to be able to handle it. And that's not a criticism on the players, because it's just purely, it's almost facts just when you look at their age and how they're going. So I don't know if they'll give it another shake. I mean, I think they will because of their experience, but it wouldn't surprise me if they fell out of the 8.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, next year is the year for them. They either go all out for the premiership, or they fall off a cliff, which a lot of people are expecting them to. So I don't know. I don't think they're going to have any retirees this year, which means they should have one more crack at it next year. But they need to start putting some games into the youngsters, or at least trading in some young players into their team, because they don't have a lot of good draft picks either. They traded them all away for Tim Kelly and players like that, Jeremy Cameron. So they're in a bit of trouble development-wise, but I mean, I think as I said, if they win the premiership next year, they're still going to have the same issue. So whether they cut ties, start now and rebuild on the run like other teams do, but it's going to be very interesting 2022 for them.
How much do you look into what Joel Selwood said after the game when I'm sure you've heard the comments where he said, I'd rather play for a club that fights tooth and nail to keep going. I don't want to start again. I mean, obviously Joel Selwood's not going to come out and say, yeah, look, we're starting again next year from zero and I'll hang him up, Tom will hang him up. Obviously he's not going to come out and say that, but do you read much into that? Do you think Geelong will? I mean, I think they'll go again, purely because, like you said, I don't see anyone retiring. And I can't imagine them pushing blokes out of the side. I mean, the only one I can see retiring is probably Sean Higgins. He was a medical sub. He came to the club to help win a flag, and he was medical sub the last half of the year. So I'd probably see him hanging them up. But yeah, do you reckon they'll give it another crack?
Yeah, I think they'll go one more time. They have to. They've got Dangerfield, they've got Selwood, Hawkins. Like they're all still there, and they're obviously still there to win a flag. So I think they'll have one more crack at it. If it doesn't come off, then they absolutely have to start again, I think, because then they're all 34, 35, 36. Like, that's just getting ridiculous, isn't it?
It's starting to push it. And I mean, what young players do you keep out? Like, how you're going to have to start again eventually. And look, you know what? If I was a Geelong fan, I wouldn't even be disappointed. I'd almost be excited for the opportunity to start again and rebuild. They've been so good for so long now. I mean, I don't remember vividly a Geelong not being good. I mean, since 2006? 2007, they won that 07 flag, obviously. But even before that, they were in prelims and semis. So they've been a good side for a long time. So
they've been absolutely probably the most successful team, really. And like, premierships aside, just consistency over a long period of time is something to be envious of.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if you told me back when I was watching, Paul Chapman, Corey Enright and all those guys in grand finals in 2007 that in 2021 they'd be playing in a prelim and not have tapered off in between that time, I wouldn't believe you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have believed you. So all testament, credit to them. They've been fantastic, but I think that, they're nearing that time now where it's sort of time to start from scratch.
Yeah. I just realised I said that they traded picks to get Tim Kelly, but they traded away Tim Kelly and got picks in.
For Jeremy Cameron.
But then they used those picks to get Jeremy Cameron. That is what I meant.
That went over my head. Didn't even notice. You could have gotten away with it.
Yeah, I just thought then, I was like, I just said that they traded in Tim Kelly, but no, they didn't. They traded him out. Yes. So,
and rightfully so, I think, as well. He wanted to go. There's no point keeping a bloke that doesn't want to be there.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I think the Cats one more year, and but yeah, they were disgusting on Friday nights. That is the prelims. There was only obviously there's only 2 games. So it's just a quick little review. We'll obviously preview the grand final next week. With the week off this week, it's all very new to all of us. But what is on this weekend, and that is the Brownlow Medal. That's on Sunday night, not a Monday night like it usually is. I think it's being held in Perth as well. So, very similar to last year, where it's going to be a predominantly virtual event. Who's your tip?
It's a tough one. It's a really tough one. I'm going to go... I think I'm going to go Petrarca. And I only go on Petrarca because, I don't know, I feel like Melbourne just have that fairy tale about him this year. A bit like in 2017 when Richmond won it and Dusty won the Brownlow. I just have a feeling something similar is going to pan out, and it could be, it could be a handful of blokes, but I'm going to go Petrarca. I think it's going to be a pretty close count though, regardless. I think the biggest thing I want to see out of the Brownlow is that someone actually hands it to the player rather than the player have to pick it up off a podium and present themselves to the Brownlow. That's the only thing I want to see out of anything. But who's your tip?
Well, I'm going to stay true to the pressure point MVP, and I'm going to back in Ollie Wines, back in our voting. I think he'll get the job done.
Despite how good he's been, I still think he is going in slightly the underdog.
Is he?
I wouldn't say heavily.
Is he
underdog.
favourite in sports betting?
I haven't checked Sportsbet.
Sports betting. I mean, sports bet.
I knew what you meant. See, I corrected you that time myself. I picked up on
having
that
a
one.
bit of a mare tonight, aren't I?
Absolutely. I actually haven't checked, so I could be eating my words there by saying that he's a bit of an underdog.
I think he's, in terms of like what people are expecting, I think he's an underdog, but I think Sportsbet have him as the favourite. Last time I checked, just checked. I don't bet, so I just have a look sometimes.
Just see what's going on. Well, I'm having a look now. See if I can find something while we're talking. Let's just keep the conversation going.
Well,
and yes, he is the favourite. You're correct. So Ollie Wines on $3 and Bontempelli second on $3.75.
There you go.
And Christian Petrarca's all the way down in fifth spot under Jack Steele. So there you go.
Where's Sam Walsh at?
Not eligible. No, he's just behind Petrarca. So it goes, I'll read those out. It's got Ollie Wines, Bontempelli, Clayton Oliver, Jack Steele, Petrarca, Matthew Richardson, and Sam Walsh. Had to give him a smoky.
Richo's back.
He's back, baby. Actually, I want to ask you this because I had this debate on the weekend, and this is completely off the run sheet. You're not expecting this question for those wondering whether we talk about it or not. But I was having a chat on the weekend when going for my leisurely stroll, and I said, if I was guaranteed if Richo came back and played one more year at Richmond next year, right? And somehow you could guarantee that he wouldn't be dog shit. Like he wouldn't play like a 38-year-old man, however old he is. He'd play like he was still pretty good, but Richmond also were guaranteed to finish last in the ladder. Would I take that just to see Richo play one more time? And I said yes.
No.
I said yes. To give me one more year of seeing Richo play at his prime. I don't know, alongside Dusty, and I said yes. I mean, maybe it's because
you'd be garbage because you finished last.
Well, that's the thing. I know, but I don't know. It's the nostalgia has taken over me. If you could see Anthony Koutafidis play in his prime, his ability was back to his prime. Like picture 99 prelim prime, and he's playing along Cripps, Walsh, all those guys. But you do finish last. For nostalgia reasons.
Absolutely not, because I've had enough of us finishing last and shit.
Fair enough. Maybe it's easier from my point of view.
No, I'm not.
Look, I think if it really came down to it, I'd probably say no. But it'd be a bloody tough one for me just to see, my idol that. I think he retired probably 1 or 2 years earlier than he would have if it wasn't for some injuries. I'd love to see him just one more year, give it a real shake. But I know it won't happen, so we don't have to worry about it.
I like it though. Good question. Great debate, that one. I might have to ask a few people about that question.
Well, if it was your childhood hero, would you see them come back in their
don't
prime?
mind it. Maybe the listeners we'll get them to answer it for us.
Absolutely.
Chuck up your answers on our stories, and we'll
put the story out there so you can respond to it.
Absolutely. Chuck your answers up there. Let us know who your favourite player is and whether you'd do that. Let them play for a game, but your team finishes last. I don't think a lot of people would do that, but we'll see.
Depends where you're on the ladder.
You're the only weirdo around here.
Well, I guess if you were just say you're a North Melbourne supporter and you could see Wayne Carey come back, well, you finished last this year, so you might say, oh, well, one more year and we get to see the King back at it. It depends where you are on the ladder, I feel, this year. If you're a club that's expecting to play finals and expecting to succeed, then most people will say no. But if you're rebuilding and expecting to finish towards the bottom anyway, why not?
Yeah, I see your point.
You see my point?
I see your point, but
I think everyone's answers are going to be different.
Yeah.
I'm looking at it purely from a nostalgic point of view and how good it would be to watch my childhood hero one more time, like one last hurrah. Obviously with a disappointing result at the end of the season, but I don't know. It's an interesting one.
I like it. It's a good little debate, but that just shows how much you love Richo.
don't tell him, guys.
All right. Well, that is pretty much us done for this episode. Short and sharp, short week. No footy this week. But yeah, as we said before, the Brownlow is on. So stay tuned for that. Hope your favourite player gets up, whoever that may be. And but yeah, as we say every week, make sure you leave us a review, subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you listen to us. Make sure you review us. That is what keeps the show going.
And speaking of Brownlow Week, make sure you all head back and check out our last episode with Brownlow medalist Shane Woden.
Absolutely, yeah. For those that haven't listened to that episode yet, that was one of our more enjoyable episodes, listening to a Brownlow medalist and getting his insight on Brownlow night and the experience there. So, yeah, good timing with the Brownlow coming up to give that a listen. I know a lot of the Melbourne supporters have already loved it and they're up and about with the grand final coming up. So, yeah, highly recommend that and share that episode around with your friends as well. But, yeah, that is us done. Enjoy the Brownlow. We'll chat next week.